No role plays, no conference calls, no BS. Chris and Lorenzo share 4 decades of combined experience to help you become a more effective leader. This is Hacking Your Leadership.
Hey, this is Chris from Hacking Your Leadership. On today's discussion on employee engagement, I want to talk about predictability from a standpoint of what it does to employee engagement and how employees react when they have a predictable job, predictable space, predictable company culture, predictable leadership versus when it's not that way. Gallup recently released numbers showing that for the first time since pre-pandemic, the percentage of actively disengaged employees dropped. So it was on a steady increase from 2020 all the way up through 2022. And then in 2023, it dropped just a little bit. And a lot of the reason for that is related to predictability of their job. When people feel like things are kind of up in the air, they are more likely to be disengaged from their job, less likely to kind of think outside the box as far as what they can do to help the company get better, do more than just whatever their job is, versus when things are predictable, it allows people to feel safe enough to kind of step outside what their daily work is and think about things they can do on top of that to help further the organization or make things better, as opposed to just kind of keeping their head down and focusing and kind of being almost like one-track mind. This is really interesting data, and I think it falls in line with what we're talking about and the importance of predictability in a workplace.
Yeah, I think it's a great topic, and I think honestly, like we're all hungry for it. You know what I mean? Like there's an element of wanting to know like what's expected, what's going on, what does the normal kind of look like? You know, can you not be distracted by changes and stuff that's happening? Kind of in the opposite of like if it's an unpredictable space to work in, you don't really know what's always going on, or you're not exactly sure what the direction is or what might be impacting you. So it's hard to focus and stay really committed to the work that you're doing. So I think it's very, very timely topic, especially as we're continuing to kind of now distance ourselves by a handful of years now from kind of the pandemic and shutdowns and all the stuff that had happened back then, to kind of get back into this newer normal of what this looks like. So it's interesting to see the data continue to change, but I think it's such an important thing to talk about because it's always something in my mind that's always relevant, but probably more now than ever before.
Right. So there's been data out there for a long time that says that, you know, if you're an organization and you need to make cuts to jobs, if you need to lay people off, that the right way to do it is to really consider everything that needs to be done or that might need to be done in the upcoming 6 months or a year, and to cut once very deep, all at the same time. It might hurt more to do that all at once from an organizational standpoint. But if you commit to only doing that once and then knowing that you're done making those cuts, what it does is it sends a sense of permanence to the people who did not get cut, to kind of say, okay, I survived this. Let's get through this and let's move forward. They can move forward with a greater sense of job security in order to kind of do the work that needs to be done to help the organization get out of whatever rut it is in. A lot of organizations kind of have a tendency to, pepper it out a little bit. We don't want to cut too much, so let's do a little bit here and then a little bit there, and it takes place over the course of 2 years as opposed to one time. And then what you have is employees who they never know when the next shoe's going to drop, right? They wonder, okay, I survived that round, but what about the next one? What about the one after that? If they're thinking that, it means that they're not focused on anything besides surviving. They're trying to figure out what can I do to survive, or they're already actively looking for employment in another place because they don't like living that way, where they're wondering whether or not they're going to survive the next round of layoffs. So, cut once, cut deep, and then move on. This predictability that helps with employee engagement from an overall job perspective, I think it's equally as important if you are a leader of people to be predictable. And so, I think this is important because even if your organization provides some level of predictability with regard to, the job expectations and job stability and security, if you as a leader aren't predictable, meaning if your employees are going to make a decision on something and you were to ask them, how will I react to this situation? If they can't immediately give you an answer, that's a problem. You as a leader need to be predictable to the point where your employees know how you're going to react based on your values, based on your previous decisions and the transparency of why you made those decisions. The more information you can give your employees as to how to read you in advance, to know exactly how you're going to react, the better it is for their engagement and their likelihood to think about what they can do to, further the results and the performance and the productivity of the team, as opposed to just whatever their own individual job is.
Yeah, I think it's it's such an important thing. I think of the times in my career where I've flourished the most as a person and as a leader, and it was at times when I had a leader who was very predictable, was very clear about their expectations, was very very consistent in their kind of reactions and their perspective, very consistent in their decision making, which made it much easier for me to understand and to think about, in this situation or in making this decision, if I was to call this leader right now, what would they tell me? And I had the answer already in my head. And that was such a helpful thing and an empowering thing to make those decisions and to be able to do those types of things. And I think that, when it comes to leadership, that is such an important part of that. That when you have your leadership brand, that people know what to expect from you. They get a sense of who you are as a person. They're really clear about the filters that you use when making decisions. And then at the end of the day, it helps to it cascades to them. They start to take on some of those similar types of lenses and perspectives, which makes it much easier to make the day-to-day decisions so that you can spend the time maybe in the more complex ones or in the space of more learning and development.
Right. So if you're a leader and you're trying to think about, okay, how do I become more predictable? How do I make sure that I'm doing this for my employees so that they feel comfortable in knowing how I'm going to react or what my response is going to be to any situation? There's some things you can do in order to make this happen, and we'll go over that. But first, I want to give it to one of our sponsors. All right, if you're a leader of people and you're trying to make sure that you are a predictable leader, or if you believe you already are one, but your people might not necessarily know that, the first thing you can do, the most important thing you can do, is to articulate why you've made any decision, even if you think it's obvious. And so if an employee comes to you for advice on something, or they ask for help on something, and you give your advice, or you give the reason, why they should do a certain thing, it's important to follow up with them and let them know why you came to that conclusion. If you can root that decision in something that is greater than just whatever the decision is, either a policy of the organization that you think is incredibly important, your own personal value system, which is probably the best way of doing it if you can do that, anything that can anchor that decision in something more than just it being a one-off. And so it becomes less of a, how is Chris going to react in this situation versus how will Chris react in situations going forward that are similar to this. If you can do that for your people, so it's not just a, here's my advice for this particular one-off, but the reason I gave you this advice is because I believe in this and this and this. This is important to me. And what that does is it lets your people know that you've articulated exactly the things that are important to you and to the organization, so that the next time they have a question, they will think about it from the standpoint of, okay, I'm going to go ask Chris about what to do in the situation. Oh, okay, what's important to Chris? Oh, it's this and this and this. Okay, it's likely he will react in this way. And then what will happen is they will test it. They will come and ask again. And then you'll react, if you react in the same way that is in line with what they believe how you were going to react already, you are furthering their belief that you become a predictable leader. You do that enough times and they will stop needing to ask you. They'll be able to execute on their own and make decisions on their own without knowing how, because if they're asking you for help, it means they don't know how you're going to react and they want to make sure that they're not doing the wrong thing. If they're able to do this on their own without asking you, you've essentially given them the answer in advance so they know what the right thing to do is. If you can do this, you'll have teams of people that become self-sufficient and that can make important decisions without having to get you involved, which is exactly what you want as a leader, so you can make sure that you can focus on actually leading people and developing people as opposed to making day-to-day decisions.
That's kind of a great breakdown of what I was saying earlier around kind of the cascading of the behavior and the understanding from the team. I think even beyond kind of the decision-making piece, I think that there are just the way that you build culture and how people are treated and how people treat one another, and understanding I think of the times when you have conflict amongst people, and a lot of times, most of the time, it's as a result of maybe a misunderstanding, or somebody's just having. Maybe somebody had an adverse reaction that was a little too quick, and has not yet gone to make it right. And then I think as a leader, when you do those types of things, and when you are the one who is predictable, and you're the one who gets in front of the team and says stuff like, "Hey, we made a mistake here," or "I made a mistake here, I made a bad call here," or "Hey, we dropped the ball as a leadership team. We're going to make this right. We're going to correct this." These are all things that you're doing that create predictability, to know that if a mistake is made, my leader will own it, and there will be some changes, and we'll talk about it, and we'll put it out in the open, and it's okay to make mistakes. Those types of things, even amongst peers, allow there to be more positive conversations. Even if somebody has an element of conflict, people are more likely to go back to one another and apologize or talk it out, or those types of things. So I think it's, besides the decision making of the day to day, I think it's such a larger piece of how you impact a culture when you are a leader and you are very predictable.
Right. I think about the times that I've walked into work, and we joke about this sometimes because it's happened to all of us. You walk into your place of business and you say hi to your boss, and for whatever reason, they're distracted or doing something, and their response to you seems colder than normal. And it's not intentional. It's just they are in the middle of something or whatever. You caught them off guard, and they respond in a way that is completely not in line with how they would normally respond to you. Your immediate reaction is, "Oh my gosh, I did something wrong. They're going to talk to me about this later because there's something I did, and I got to think back about what did I do wrong." And then you start thinking about it, and you go, "Well, I didn't do anything wrong. I haven't. There's nothing there to be going on here." This is the type of predictability I'm talking about. And, unfortunately, it can manifest itself in you kind of having negative thoughts about a certain situation. But in general, it is a good thing for a leader to be predictable, because it can help with the decision-making process and overall employee engagement. Thanks for joining us for this discussion on employee engagement. We'll see you next Thursday for another one. Have a great day.